Hi everyone, it's Kim. Thanks for joining me. Today is part 2 of the classes that I took in Creativation, and they were all with instructors or the signature designers from Ranger. So the instructors were Dina Wakley, Dyan Reaveley, and Simon Hurley. But I'm actually going to start with a Spellbinders class because Dina Wakley has a collection with them, and they were made in the spirit of mixed media. So let me start with those. I have taken classes from Dina before, and she's a wonderful instructor. And in her second life or in another life, she must have been a stand-up comedian. She is just hilarious in her classes. So what we made was a card. We did make an A2 card here. You can see that. And then this is like a hardboard, so more of a decor piece, but both in the style of mixed media. So what we use for this are pieces of Dina's new collection. The first one is a better press plate called Growing. So we have better press plates plus the die to cut out the leaves, and then we just used a circle die to cut out the circle. So that is something that we shared. Again, we had a partner and we shared the machines and inks and different tools. Then for the embossing folder, she has 2 new embossing folders. So one of them is called Line Circles. And this is one of the big 8.5 by 5.5 sizes, and we use that's the background of this card. And the other one is a 3D embossing folder called Lined Corners. Again, another nice big folder, and you can see kind of how the wavy lines all come together, kind of meet here in the circle or in the center. And that is the background that we used here. So we did use paints, and those were all provided to us. There were little dabs of paint. So the first thing we did was we embossed our paper, and then we colored our backgrounds, let those dry, and then started working on the letterpress pieces here and die cut those out. This piece here is from Ranger. This is the Typography 2 Transparency. So this was already cut out for us, and all we did was adhere it with a little bit of her glue here in the center, and then it's all covered up. So Dina just walked us through, embossing, painting. Again, you just put it down there. You don't think about it. And she demoed it, and again, she's hilarious when she does it because just get it on the paper. It doesn't matter because like this one we cut up anyway. The rest of her pieces, so the sentiment, You Matter More Than You Know, is from her new letterpress sentiment set. So this is her collection. Let me show you these over here so you can see some other things that she has done with her collection. The sentiments are called Holding Your Heart Sentiments. I know those are pretty small. There's also a coordinating die to cut those out. And the 2 embossing folders, the Growing Better press plates, and here's another one, Flourishing. So we did not use this, but you can see how nicely it would coordinate with the Growing letterpress plates. So a fun class. And when I got home, I probably, again, don't use a lot of paint. This one would be easy to do. Just get it on there. Don't overthink it. But I thought, if I don't want to get all the paints out and kind of make that kind of mess, what could I do with just the letterpress plates, inks, and die cuts that I already have in my stash? So let me show you what I did when I got home. Actually, I just made some of the plates because I thought, I love these circles. And I can just lay them out. And I used a variety of different paper, and I just letterpress these. And some of them you can see where I went back through. This is my watercolor pencils from Tim Holtz. This is a piece of more like handmade paper, and they really didn't move. So I used those here on the circles, and then I used distress ink just to blend in, and I knew I could spray it, and that would help move it around a little bit. But again, I'm just experimenting. These 2, it's just letterpressed onto paper, and I ink the edges, and then this one I did ink the circles, again, all with distress ink. But again, just playing. If I decide, I don't like it, I can die cut it up. But let me show you the 2 that I do like. So the first one, I just letterpress those circles in the background, And then this is a more current Spellbinders die, which unfortunately I don't have in front of me. And then this Make Every Moment Golden is one of Dina's sentiments that these were already cut out for us. We got the whole set already cut out, so I just added that. And then again, here's another one. This time this is on watercolor paper, so my inks moved like they should on watercolor paper, a little softer than the other one. I have these flowers already cut out. These are Dina's leaves. These bigger ones here are from the letterpress plate. So I just cut those out, and I actually just ran this through without any ink on it onto like my green cardstock here, my dark green cardstock. Then I took a water brush. I could see the indentations, and I took a water brush, again using the watercolor pencils from Tim Holtz, and just kind of went back into those grooves there. And it's subtle, but you can kind of see the lines that are on the plate here. So again, just experimenting. These are those anemone, if I'm saying that one correct, anemone flower from Spellbinders. And those are already done, so I just thought, wow, the colors work and I'm going to use it. So you can still use the plates even if you're maybe not into mixed media. They're still beautiful plates to use and to mix and match with maybe flowers that you already have in your stash. So my first Ranger class was also with Dina, and that was mixed media as well. So this is the book that we use. I'm just going to run through the pieces that were given to us, and then I'll show you what we actually did here. So we had a stencil. Again, we had a partner. So we each had a different stencil. So I had the word stencil, and then we had some transparencies. This is all Ranger products. So there were different transparencies. My neighbor had one that was circles, but they were different sizes, so we shared those. Then the collage paper, we all got a package of this. I'm just going to turn this over so you can see what it looks like on the back since the paper is so thin. And then we didn't use this, but Dina shared this with us. So this is like a ledger sheet, and then she said she typed all this in. And again, this is a product you can get through Ranger, but that's kind of neat. And then what we worked in was the ledger book. And I was really, I love this. I thought this was neat. So this is an old ledger book that was reproduced. She told us she bought this book off of, I believe it was Etsy. She paid like $100 and then reproduced it. I think this is a cool idea because I know I have a ledger book and I would never cut it up. So I was glad we had a reproduction to do this on. So like the first thing we do, of course, is cut half the page out, and we can save this and use it for something else. We also got some paint, and so I had two colors. My partner had two colors, and then a different stencil. So again, we share products, and then we just paint, and we use the sponge daubers here. These sponge daubers here, and Ranger provided the tools, and then we just used the daubers to put the paint on. Again, just get it on there. You don't think about it. And then you can see the circle stencil here that my neighbor had. And this, let's see here. I'm trying to think where this little angel thing came from. I think we had a sheet with that. And I apologize. Now I don't remember where that came from. But we just trimmed this out. We did have some different pieces that we could use to trim that out. That might have been already on a piece of paper for us. And then we have these tags. These are the collage elements here. The collage paper. So again, we could go pick out whatever we wanted in this whole pack. If we wanted something different, we could pick out whatever we wanted and just collage those on. Then we added a little more paint and the stencils to that. Here are those transparencies we just cut out using her glue and just glued those on. So my neighbor had these smaller ones, and this one was for my neighbor. So we just spent an hour and a half having fun, just putting the paint down. I had to let the paint dry. But now I have this rest of this book, and I can do whatever I want with either Dina's supplies or really with anything that I may have that I want to do in this book. I think these are really, really neat. And again, it was a fun class, even if you're not into mixed media, just to have the experience of having a class with Dina is great. So my next class was with Dyan Reaveley, and excuse me while I pull this out of the pack. I didn't want to lose everything here. And I've also taken a class with Dyan Reaveley in the past. A wonderful experience. She is a great, great teacher and a lot of fun. So this was our project, and I will show you how far I got. Again, we have a partner, so we're sharing supplies. So let me show you what we used, and then I'll show you what we used to actually make these pieces. So this was my half-finished project here, and we'll go through it in a little more detail. And it was a lot about learning to use her supplies. So we had some little tags that were provided to us, so like you can purchase these. And then we had a Stampers Anonymous stamp set. This is Get Your Rocks On that we used to impress into our tag. And then they gave us a rectangle artboard frame, puzzle frame that we could do whatever we want with. And then the supplies that we had. So like I had kit B and the person next to me had kit A. So we all had kind of different colors, different supplies. Let me just empty this out real quick. So we all got an embossing powder. Now we didn't use this, but she calls hers Pebbles. And this is, I think, clear embossing powder. And then the one that we did use is her Diamond Rocks. Now I'm going to open this up and hopefully it won't fly everywhere. But like this is for ultra thick embossing powder. So it's kind of chunky there. So I had one color. I have, let's see here, Sapphire. And I believe, look, I think Garnet was the other one. Yes. So mine's more purple, and my partner had the more really deep red color. And I want to try to get this lid on so it's not everywhere. Then we all got some black paint to paint our frame boards here. And then we each got 2 colors of the Diamond Dust, which is like perfect pearl. So I have Parrot and Laid Back, or excuse me, Island Parrot and Laid Back Lilac. And the other 2 colors were Calypso Teal and Bubblegum Pink. So again, we shared these. We got some brushes. And I use these little ones, Faffer and Fluffer. So they each have a different purpose. And then we didn't use this big one, but we have this nice big one. And then we each got like a embossing pad. And my neighbor had the embossing like solution that comes out of a dabber. And she was a store owner, so she graciously said, "Hey, I already have this in the store. Would you like it?" So sure, love it. So that's the products that we used to create this. So we basically learned how to put on 3 layers of the embossing rocks. So embossing powder that she calls Diamond Rock. So it's super thick. Think of ultra embossing powder, ultra thick embossing powder. So after we did our 3 layers, and while the embossing powder is still hot, that's when we took the embossing pad and we just dabbed on whatever stamp we were going to use, whatever design, and pressed that into the hot embossing powder. And then we took our little Faffer, or excuse me, yes, the little Faffer, the little pointed brush, and dipped into the different sets of Diamond Dust and then just dabbed in there. And we let it set for a little bit. And then after it's like cooled down and set, then we use the Fluffer brush to kind of go back in and just take out the excess Diamond Dust, or yes, Diamond Dust. We did the same thing here, except we just painted it black and stamped our stamp with the embossing powder, put it down, and then just, again, use the same brushes, kind of the same process, and added whatever colors of the Diamond Dust that we wanted. And then let it sit for a little bit and use that fluffer brush to kind of clean up all the excess. Now, I still need to go through and do this on the outer edge. You would think in an hour and a half that we would have plenty of time, but I was amazed at the time it took to do this. And again, we're sharing the heat tool and everything else. So my edges aren't real good. I think I'm going to go around with a black marker just so I don't have that open edge. And then do the same thing around this edge. So it's great that they give us the instructions. So when we go back, so we've got very detailed instructions. You can see how we're adding her diamond dust there. And I'll be able to finish it up. But again, it's always great to take a class with her. I have not used her diamond rocks. I have used ultra thick embossing powder, but not the beautiful colors that she has. And it was fun to use her diamond dust and learn a little bit more about impressing a stamp into the hot. And this has 3 levels, or 3 layers. So again, it's built up and it's hot when you press that stamp into it. So again, we were moving all right along on this class. And then for those few people who did finish, when we were all done, you could go back and give this a real light spray of a fixative, a sealing spray, just so that, if this would not rub off at all, you don't have to worry about your diamond dust or perfect pearls rubbing off. So again, I will have to take the time to finish that up, but it's always a pleasure to take a class with Dyan Reaveley. And then the last class that I took was with Simon Hurley. And I have never had a class with Simon. I watched his videos. I think he does wonderful things. I remember Simon at his first Creativation. I think he was all of 17 at that time. And he's either 22, maybe 23 now. So he does a wonderful job teaching and controlling the class and kind of all the, fun that people like to have because we're so much older. Pretty much everybody in the class is a lot older than Simon. So we always have a good time there. But we did 3 cards with his products, and that was a lot of fun for me because I have not used his products before. And again, he was a fabulous teacher. So these are the 3 cards. So let me show you those, and then I'll show you his new products that we used. And we started off using his solar sprays, which I really love. I've never used these before. So I have 2 colors. And again, my partner had the other 2 colors. And these are something that, let me show you. You can see the shine. So if you look head on, you don't really see that shimmer, but when you start moving it, you see the shimmer and the color. So we use 3 different colors on this, and you do have to shake this good. And we spent a lot of time shaking so that all of this has to disappear before you start spraying. So let me show you the 3 cards, and then we also used one of his new stamp sets. So this is the first one, and we made this with a stencil, and I'll show you the stencil here in just a second, and his new floral die or floral stamp. We did 3 different techniques using his inks and the solar sprays and his stencil set. So here's the last one. On this one, we just went across and sprayed. We didn't use the stencil set except for right here. And that is when we used a little bit of his glittery astro paste. We just used our fingers and rubbed it on there. Not a lot, just a little bit of glitter. And one of his stamp sets. So let me show you what we used, and we'll kind of refer back to these as we do that. So the first thing let's look at is this 6x6 layering stencil. You can see the 3 different patterns that we used. So this one is the first one we did on this black cardstock. And we just laid the first one down, sprayed it. I believe that was with the Cross My Heart, like the pink spray. And then we let it dry for a second. It does dry very quickly. Then we just got the second stencil and we could lay that in. And let me see. I don't quickly have that. We have everything we used, but of course I can't find it quickly since we're looking here. I think it was the called Golden Hour, the solar spray. And then I have Crocodile Tears, so I think we used Royal Flush. That was the purple. That's the last color that we used. So I love this. I was just blown away by that. And then we used the stencil on this one as well. And we used like the golden hour on that, and then I believe the pink cross my heart on the top. We did use some of his inks, which was also a new experience for me. I haven't used his inks in the past. So I had 3 colors and my partner had 3 other colors. So we did ink up the background before we sprayed it. And then we used one of his stamps on this final background. And this was interesting. So the stamp is really double this size and it's just all this text, but they cut it in half because we really didn't need to have one huge stamp. We could stamp twice. So I thought that was a unique way to share a really, really large stamp. And if you wanted, this is done really lightly, but you could, if there was a sentence or some phrase you wanted, you could cut that out and just use that separately on one of your card bases. We also got his new stamp set called Heartfelt Blooms. And so the stamp set is from Ranger as well. And we use like the larger blooms and this long stem here. And the large blooms on 2 of them here. So this was all done for us. The stamped and die cut out, so all we had to do was color. But we do have the stamp sets, and we did use the stamps and his ink pads to do like the overlay on the stamp. So that's what we did on this one. This one we just used some blender brushes and his inks and blended the color on. And this one we used a water brush to color in. So we kind of just mixed the ink color, we smushed the ink and a solar spray just to give it some liquid. And I apologize, I don't think that was a water brush. It was just a regular dry brush that we picked up and then colored in. So again, 3 different techniques using the same products. And instead of just like, okay, you need this for this card, you need all this for a second card, we were able to do a number of different things with the same products. So I think those are beautiful cards. Again, a wonderful experience having Simon as an instructor, and a lot of different styles from the signature designers from Ranger. So we've got Dyan, Simon, Dina. Dina is that great big book thing, and now I don't know what I did with that. Here it is. And then her letterpress, Dina's letterpress from Spellbinders. So we can use paint and inks and sprays in many different ways, whether it's cards, whether it's mixed media. Here's Dina in her big ledger book. So that is it for my classes from Creativation. Again, a wonderful experience as always. And just to be able to take these classes from these designers using their products is always really, really special. So thanks for joining me today, and I'll see you again in a future video.